What's up, everybody? Alicia here. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're new, hey. So about a year ago, I put out a video kind of describing the reasons why I did not complete my 2022 Appalachian Trail through hike attempt. To be quite frank, those were my knee-jerk reactions. I don't want to say excuses because they do still hold true. But they were sort of the more superficial reasons why I got off trail. And over the last year since I put that video out, I've done a lot of self-reflection, kind of looking very introspectively at myself, facing my shortcomings, all sorts of things that one does when they're going through a pretty hard, difficult time in their lives. And what I'm going to do in this video is sort of outline the no BS reasons, I guess you can call them, why I ended up getting off trail in 2022 during my AT through hike attempt. Most of them are kind of rooted back to one root cause that I want to talk about. So yeah, here we go into my no BS reasons why I ended my 2022 Appalachian Trail through hike attempt. All right, so before we start kind of outlining everything, I wanted to give you a definition of the word ego. So when you hear the word ego, a lot of you probably think of, someone having a big ego, someone who's really full of themselves, thinks they're God's gift to the world, blah, blah, blah. When I'm referring to my own ego during this video, that's not what I'm referring to. I do not think I'm better than people. I don't think super highly of myself in that way. But I'm gonna grab you, and excuse me looking down, I am reading from my laptop just below my phone here where I've taken notes because I wanted to have, like really good notes outlined for this video so it was cohesive. All right, so according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, ego is defined as the sense of self, particularly as contrasted with another self or the world. Alternatively, it is also defined as one of three divisions of the psyche in psychoanalytic theory that serves as the organized conscious mediator between the person and reality, especially by functioning both in the perception of and adaptation to reality. Also, I found this kind of helpful description on BetterHelp's website, describing what the ego is in terms of the psyche. The ego may often be defined as part of the psyche responsible for our sense of self and our ability to interact with the outside world. It may be the part of the self that is likely most closely connected to reality and our sense of self-awareness. The ego's function might include mediating between the id, which represents our unconscious desires, and the outside world, assisting in decision-making and problem-solving, helping you to form a sense of identity and self-awareness, enabling you to navigate your surroundings and interact with others in a meaningful way. And then it goes on to discuss the ego a little bit more, but I wanted to just preface this video with those definitions so that it can help you kind of understand what I am referring to. So I do think that a lot of the reasons that I give as to why I got off trail in 2022 can really be, rooted down to an unhealthy relationship with my own ego. And hopefully that makes sense as I go through this list. So we're going to start out this video with number one, which I think is kind of one of the biggest things here, and that is my identity as a hiker. So I do have a strong sense of self in that I identify so strongly as a hiker. If you having this YouTube channel, if you've looked at my Instagram page, like a big part of my life and how I identify is as an outdoor enthusiast, a hiker, etc. And having done so many difficult hiking challenges in the past, such as, I've done all of the Colorado 14ers, I've done almost all of the Adirondack high peaks, I've done the Presidential Traverse in the White Mountains in a day, I've summited Mount Rainier without a guide, etc. I've done a lot of difficult things in the mountains, and I sort of went into the AT with a sense of personal pride, and I guess you can kind of say if there's going to be one point during this video that, you know, I did have a stereotypical ego as far as thinking a little bit too highly of myself, it would be this point. But I did feel like I had a leg up already going into the AT, given I had already done so many difficult things in the mountains. This ultimately led me to believe I could or should be doing bigger miles right from the get-go rather than easing into the trail. You know, doing less than 10 miles on a day hike, or even, you know, a back-to-back hike one day and then another day as a day hike, is typically no sweat for me. You know, it's what it is. I can easily do it. I'm not in too much pain. It doesn't really hurt at all at any point. So that kind of led me to thinking that I could start off the trail doing 10 plus miles every day and not really considering how it would affect me to do that back to back every single day. You know, my day one, if you watched my day one video, I did, I think, like 14.5 miles or something like that, which is crazy for the first day. Most people do significantly less than that, and that's sort of the attitude and the mileage that I tried to keep up throughout the rest of my hike when I was on trail. But this ultimately led me to feeling like I had to prove myself to other hikers on trail, and also to you guys, my YouTube subscribers and viewers. Given my past hiking resume, I felt like I had something to prove. Oddly enough, like, I don't know. That's just sort of, I do feel like, you know, as we're talking through this would be the one topic that I do feel like maybe I did have that stereotypical, like, ego or big head about my abilities, given what I had done in the past. So that in turn contributed to me not being willing to take it slow and ease into my through hike. And ultimately, you know, I've talked about this in the past, the big miles that I did consistently is what led to my overuse injuries and the physical problems that I was experiencing that ultimately contributed to me getting off trail. All right, so another thing that I do feel like, you know, this is more an unhealthy relationship with my own ego in terms of psyche, you know, self-awareness, things like that, is sort of denying my age. So I was 36 when I started my through hike attempt in 2022, and for the trail, I do feel like that's sort of middle-aged. So I fell in between two large age groups of hikers. If you've ever been on the trail as a through hiker, you, I'm sure, can confirm this, but there's typically two main age groups on trail. You have your fresh out of high school or fresh out of college age kids. So, you know, you're talking somewhere in the age range of 18 to, let's say 23, 24. And then you have your group of retired people, you know, who had the AT as a bucket list item, but they couldn't make it work during their working years, whether it was because they had families or they didn't want to, you know, put their careers aside. So they are now hiking the Appalachian Trail after they've retired. So, you know, they're in their 60s, 70s, etc., hiking the trail. So as a 36-year-old woman out on trail, especially a 36-year-old woman who does not have children or a family, it was a little bit hard to fit in. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit, just talking about my age in general. So I don't really feel like I'm in my late 30s. You know, I still feel young. I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. And I found myself trying to hike a style hike that the younger crowd was hiking, which is typically big miles focused on getting to Katahdin with as little zeros or downtime as possible. I felt like hiking with the older crowd would maybe force me to come to terms with my own age. And I also felt like my speed and mileage maybe aligned more with the younger crowd. And this is sort of going back to the last point. There is my identity as a hiker. Maybe my actual stereotypical ego led me to believe that I could keep up with the younger crowd and do those big miles. And this is all, you know, of course, a generalization. If you've actually been on trail, you know that there's retired older people that can kick butt on trail and do big miles, keep up with the younger crowd. You see tramilies that are mixed with 60-year-olds hiking with 18-year-olds, and that's the reality of trail. But my reality was that I wanted to, again, this was sort of proving something to myself or other people on the outside that I could keep up with the 20-year-olds, and I wasn't hiking with, the retirees, which is me coming to terms with my own age and things like that. And then going back to the fact that I was sort of an odd man out on trail in terms of being like more middle-aged on trail and child-free. It definitely made it difficult to relate and connect to other hikers on trail. And I do mention my age in relation to being child-free because most women my age are home raising families. Being 36, most 36-year-old women have, I don't know, 10-year-old kids. And so I didn't see many people around my age, especially other women on trail, that I could really form good relationships with. But in general, being child-free, no matter who I was talking to on trail, whether it was older people or people fresh out of college, obviously people fresh out of college don't have kids yet, but they do have that goal in the future. But the older people generally are parents themselves, possibly grandparents, and that's a huge part of their lives, understandably, is their children and grandchildren. And that's sort of, you talk about your life back home when you're at a shelter, at hostels, things like that. So I didn't have that in common with people to be discussing. So yeah, that definitely impacted my ability to form relationships with people on trail. All right, the third point that I want to discuss is my inability to be flexible or change plans to stay with or form a tramily. So I went into my hike wanting to stay in certain hostels and at certain places, towns, and I typically booked rooms and beds a couple of days in advance because I had a lot of anxiety about there not being availability at the places that I definitely wanted to stay at. Like, for example, Chica and Sunsets, I 1000% wanted to stay there. And they do, you can only book so far in advance with them. But I booked as soon as I could with Chica and Sunsets. And meanwhile, the people that I had been hiking with were making different plans. But I really wanted to stay at Chica and Sunset. So I was like, absolutely not. I'm going to stick with my plans. I'm going to do a 0 in Franklin. That way I can really enjoy my stay at Chica and Sunsets and the town of Franklin. And the people I was hiking with chose to stay elsewhere, and they did not 0 the next day. So they went on and hiked ahead. I did ultimately catch up to them due to some weather issues, but I was not flexible. I wasn't staying with people that I was hiking with on trail in the same lodging places. So the only time I would really see them is on trail, or maybe we could coordinate plans to grab a beer or food or whatever. But given that I wasn't staying with them at the same place, it made it a little bit more difficult to make plans to meet up in towns. So to an extent, I do still want to hike my own hike and stay where I want to stay for my next attempt. But I do want to give myself more flexibility to go with the flow and adjust my plans if the people I'm hiking around want to do something different and I enjoy their company and want to try to form relationships with them. And on that same note, having a strict itinerary some days, because I had to be to Fontana Dam on X day, like that forced me to have to hike more miles on some days where I knew I probably physically should take it easier. I remember one day I did a 16-mile day from the NOC to, I forget the name of the shelter, I'll try to pop it down here. It was a 16-mile day with like 6,000 feet of elevation gain or something like that, and I am pretty confident that is the day that completely destroyed my Achilles because I started having pretty consistent pain after that day. So, and I did that because I knew I had to get to Fontana Village the next day. And the tramily that I was hiking with, they did not do that like itinerary, and they ended up getting to Fontana Dam the day after me. We did still ultimately end up hiking through the Smokies mostly together. But yeah, so another example of how I was unwilling to change my itinerary, how that affected my sort of need to do bigger days than I probably should have. All right, topic number 4. I've touched briefly on this in the past in other videos, but social anxiety is a bitch, and forgive my cursing there, but long and short of it is social anxiety sucks. From the first moment on trail where I felt or imagined any sort of rejection from other hikers, I really couldn't shake it moving forward on trail or get it out of my head. And this, prefacing this, I'm not blaming anyone that I was hiking with on trail whatsoever, because I do know that it's 99% likely that I imagined this all in my head because of my social anxiety. But the first time someone I was hiking with opted to keep hiking instead of stopping and camping where we had discussed camping together just that morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong on the trail and that people didn't like me or want me around. Everyone should hike their own hike and hike how they want to hike, do the miles they want to hike. If it doesn't align with someone else that you're hiking with, by all means, keep hiking. So again, I'm not blaming or putting any of this onto other people on trail. But what I am trying to illustrate here is how it affected my social anxiety, or how my social anxiety affected me given the circumstances and things that I started imagining or telling myself. But my mind told me that these people moved on because I was boring or I wasn't fun. They didn't want to be around me, etc., etc. So this has been a long-standing issue of mine since about middle school that I'm constantly trying to work on, but it's a really difficult thing to overcome. If you have social anxiety, you probably know how difficult it is to stop your mind from making up things in your head and then you believing them. So I set out on the AT partly to find people who got me and had similar interests and hobbies. So the very first minute I felt like someone didn't want me around, I did shut down. And that's something I was unwilling or unable to admit verbally last year in my video. So I shut down to developing relationships with people. I shut down to socializing at hostels. I shut down to open myself up to people, and that was to sort of protect myself. I didn't want to feel those feelings of rejection. If I put myself out there and tried to socialize with people, tried to form relationships, that just gave them an opportunity to reject me. In reality, it gave myself the opportunity to make up something in my head that told me they were rejecting me. So that's that. And I do think that is related to my own ego and sense of self, maybe like an imposter syndrome type thing. So yeah, I'd go back and forth on trail trying to figure out how to stop this from happening, but I always found myself back in the same place, feeling unwanted and disliked. So I pulled away from others on the trail, and then ultimately the trail itself, to protect my feelings, for lack of better phrase. So that's that. All right, number 5, we're gonna get real here. I put outside support on too high of a pedestal. And I'm going to try to say this the nicest way possible because I don't want to offend people or have people feel like I'm calling them out. But I do feel like going into this hike during my preparation, while I was on the hike itself, I expected too much from the people that I know in real life. I expected support from certain people in my life that I didn't get. And I guess I let that destroy my psyche, my ego, a little bit while on trail. So I let the disappointment of that take hold of my mind, and I got in my own head about it. I had so much support on YouTube. All of you guys were great. I loved all the comments, the supportive comments and suggestions, and everyone saying they wanted me to keep going or, do whatever to make it to Katahdin. I did have some negative comments here and there, but those don't really bother me from strangers. So I'm super grateful for all of you that left supportive comments and watched my videos and etc. And there were, circling back to me saying that I expected support from people that I didn't get. I did get support from people that I'd never expected it from, people I haven't spoken to in years, reaching out to me on social media saying they were supporting me and watching my journey. That I appreciated and was so surprising as well. But when the people that I thought would be more active in showing support to me, both before I got on trail and while I was on trail, didn't live up to sort of the expectations that I had set, I felt really hurt. My anxiety and depression made it difficult to overcome those feelings some days. I know, when I had really difficult days and I sort of verbalized it in my videos or on my Instagram stories, and I didn't get supportive comments from people that I maybe would have expected it from, it really hurt. And again, I'm not trying to be mean or call anyone out. I'm just trying to describe how that affected me and my psyche on trail. I do think it contributed to me not having fun, and it exacerbated my social anxiety to some level and my imposter syndrome. So me describing this topic, I do want to say that I try not to let outside validation or lack thereof affect me very much. I know we live in a society, with social media where likes and we put too much stock in getting the likes and social media support and blah, 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 all this stuff. And, a lot of people feel like that is dumb. If someone I don't know doesn't offer validation, like I don't know that you watch my video and don't comment on it, or you see my Instagram and don't respond, but when it's people that I actually know in real life that I would have expected to, participate a little bit more, and they don't, that's when that lack of validation and support does really start to kind of affect you on a personal level. So I hope that makes sense. And again, I'm not trying to call anyone out or make anyone feel bad that I do know personally. There were people that I know personally that did participate and support me. So if you offered comments or anything in any way, just know that this is likely not about you. So please don't take it that way. But I did feel like I needed to discuss this because it did play a significant role in my own psyche and anxiety. All right, point number 6. And again, this is something that I'm going to kind of be very ginger and gentle about. But my boundary setting could have been better with my spouse back home. So I didn't set proper or clear boundaries with Jordan prior to me going on trail. I knew this endeavor would be a huge challenge for him as well at home because he's, we've lived together for more than 10 years at the time that I went on trail, and we always split responsibilities. Having pets takes some work, especially our pets who both have, at the time we had 3 pets, they all had medical issues, okay? I knew that he was going to have to take on a significant amount of responsibility with me being gone. However, I did allow his stress and anxiety about me being gone, and his worry for me and my safety on trail. If you were on trail around me last year, you know that there was a situation with another thru hiker that he was being problematic, for lack of better word, without going into too much detail. Jordan knew about it, and he most definitely worried and had anxiety about it, that something was going to happen to me. So I let his stress and anxiety about all of these things, his added responsibilities back home, his stress about my safety on trail, I let that seep into my mind too much because I didn't set proper boundaries with him prior to trail, that when we did get the chance to have conversations, that and I don't want to say he couldn't talk to me about things that was bothering him. It kind of dominated a lot of our conversations, and day after day of hearing things and just always hearing about things that were stressing him and bothering him, and then hearing from like my mom about how stressed Jordan was, it really did affect me in a negative way, I think. And I do 1000% want to support my spouse as much as possible while I'm gone, because I am making the choice to go out and do this. I know that it's putting him in a more difficult situation. He 1000% supports me in doing it and taking on these extra things, but I do want to be mindful of his own well-being as much as possible while I'm away too. So that's not to say that, on my next attempt, like, he can't talk to me about things that are bothering him, but I do believe that we need to ensure next time that he has other avenues to let off these stressful and anxiety-ridden concerns and thoughts that he's having, other than just venting to me while I'm on trail hundreds of miles away, not having another way to support him other than just listening. So I do think that he's also learned some lessons and some things about himself throughout this whole experience last year and this past year. I do plan on hopefully doing another video with him. I know prior to me getting on trail in 2022, I did sort of a Q&A with Jordan, to sort of get a spouse's perspective on things, that I would love to kind of revisit that and do another video with him so he can talk about the things he learned and how he will approach my next attempt differently. But part of that will be setting better boundaries. All right, number 7 is that I was not in the best physical shape that I could have been, and I did not participate in stretching while I was on trail. This kind of goes back to number 1, where I talked about my identity as a hiker. So because I saw myself as a hiker prior to going on trail, I didn't really think that I needed to really get in better shape to through hike the Appalachian Trail. I thought it was just hiking, which essentially it is. It's hiking every day back to back, and I already hiked fairly regularly, so I didn't really think that I needed to get in better shape. I barely trained in advance for this hike. I day hiked, but I didn't do anything else to set my physical body up for better success when it came to preventing overuse injuries and improving my endurance. And sort of my need to prove my identity as a hiker by doing bigger miles from the start, combined with me not preparing better physically or stretching on a daily basis, contributed to my overuse injuries that I developed. And if you watch any of my videos or watched my other, reasons why I got off trail video, I had Achilles tendonitis and some pretty significant foot pain that even weeks after I got off trail, I was hobbling around because of. And then going back to my inability to be flexible, like I mentioned before, that caused me to not know how to handle the overuse injuries that I developed, so that I could heal on trail while still making progress towards Katahdin. It would have been possible if I started rehabbing my injuries at the first sign of pain. If I was more flexible, taking some zeros early on, or doing less miles, dropping the miles down and doing some Nero days, some more zero days, maybe getting off trail and going to a doctor. If I was more flexible and willing to do those things, I may have been able to rehab my injuries early on. That would have allowed me to continue pushing forward. But I just kept up the high miles every day, hiking through the pain, hiking through the injury, which ultimately, I do believe that ultimately led me to my only choice being to get off trail, because the injuries were just too bad at that point that I would need a month minimum to rehab, which time was not, is not always necessarily on your side. So being in better shape prior to getting on trail would definitely help prevent the overuse injuries from springing up, and having a better stretching routine while on trail definitely would help my muscles recover every day. So that was probably part of my ego, not having the self-awareness to know that I needed to do those things. All right, so you might be wondering, hi, okay, Alicia, so there's all these things, like this huge list of things that contributed to you not being able to through hike the entire Appalachian Trail, and you're telling me that you're going to through hike again in 2024. Like, how in the world do you think that you're going to be successful given this extensive list of things that you just listed off as far as reasons go why you couldn't do it in 2022? And I'm glad you asked. So probably one of the next few videos that I put out, I am going to address how I plan to prevent each of these things from happening again. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I've spent a lot of time reflecting and digging deep and looking at myself very introspectively. And I definitely, have ideas and things in my head that I am going to try to do differently before I get on trail and while I'm on trail in 2024 to prevent these things from happening again, whether it's changing my mindset through therapy or self-help prior to trail, getting in better physical shape, even just facing these things and doing this video and putting it out into the world, I feel like is very, like, just step one, right, is admitting you have a problem. So admitting I have this problem with an unhealthy relationship with my own ego in terms of my psyche goes is step one, right? As far as like admitting that this is what happened, and now I can move forward and try to figure out how to prevent them from happening. So look for another video in the future where I again go back through this list and sort of tell you how I'm going to prevent these things from happening. But I hope this helps give some insight, into, like I said, like the title of this is, the no BS reasons why I or someone else might not be able to finish a through hike attempt. My hope for putting out this video is that some other people might be able to relate to it. Whether you have already attempted a through hike and were unable to complete the trail, maybe hearing some of the thoughts that I've had over the last year might sort of hit with you too, and cause you to think of things in a different way. Or maybe you're going to be through hiking in the future, whether it's 2023, 2024, or far beyond. You might listen to this video and think, oh, hey, like I could foresee this being a problem for me too. Being able to identify that prior to getting on trail, I feel like is huge. So hopefully that helps you in that way. Or you just sort of learn more about me and learn more about why I was unable to finish last year, and can hopefully understand why I might want to try again now that I have done this self-discovery, knowing that maybe I have a better shot next time, since I'm able to hopefully address all of these issues. So hopefully you found this video helpful or interesting, etc. If you want to find out how I'm going to prevent all these things from happening again in 2024, be sure to just subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. That way you don't miss my next video when I put that out. Going through all of that. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, share it with other people that might find it helpful as well. And I will see you on the next video. Bye.